The Great Fire of London in 1666 and the history of Amen Corner are two significant chapters in the city's story, intertwining religion, commerce, and culture in ways that have shaped the development of the capital. As the flames of the Great Fire of London raged across the city in 1666, the devastation was unlike anything the city had ever witnessed. The inferno, which began in a bakery on Pudding Lane, quickly spread across the city, fueled by a combination of dry conditions, strong winds, and the narrow, timber-framed streets that were packed tightly with houses and businesses. By the time the fire was extinguished, it had destroyed nearly 4/5 of the city, including large portions of the renowned bookselling district that surrounded St. Paul's Cathedral. Among the many businesses that perished in the fire were those of the booksellers who had made Amen Corner their home. This area, long associated with literature, was the beating heart of London's vibrant publishing scene. Shops filled with books, pamphlets, and manuscripts lined the streets, drawing in intellectuals, authors, and curious minds. The area was a place where people gathered to discuss the latest political ideas, scientific discoveries, and religious debates. But now, the booksellers' livelihoods were being consumed by the very flames that had engulfed the city. In a desperate attempt to salvage what they could, many of the booksellers sought refuge in the crypt of St. Paul's Cathedral, hoping that the thick stone walls and vaults would offer some protection from the inferno. The crypt, a hallowed space traditionally reserved for the burial of the city's prominent figures, became a temporary sanctuary for those clinging to their books. With every moment that passed, the fire grew closer, and the booksellers frantically moved as many books as they could carry into the crypt, hoping that the cathedral's solid stone structure would shield them from the flames. However, the sheer intensity of the fire was far greater than anyone had anticipated. The heat from the flames outside was so intense that it began to weaken even the stone walls of the crypt. As the fire raged above, the extreme temperatures caused the stones to crack and crumble, creating an environment far less protective than the booksellers had hoped. Despite the crypt's seeming fortitude, the heat began to seep in, damaging the fragile books and manuscripts that had been carefully placed there. The combination of smoke, heat, and the collapse of structural integrity turned the crypt from a refuge into another site of destruction. The priceless collections that had taken years or even generations to assemble were lost in the fire, many of them irretrievably damaged or destroyed. In the aftermath, London was left reeling, not only from the loss of life and property, but from the destruction of cultural and intellectual heritage. For the booksellers, many of whom had poured their life's work into their collections, the Great Fire marked a devastating blow. They had lost not only the tangible products of their labor but also a piece of the city's soul, its literature, its knowledge, its identity. Despite the widespread destruction, St. Paul's Cathedral itself remained a powerful symbol of resilience. Though the wooden interior was destroyed by the fire, the stone structure of the cathedral stood largely intact. The survival of the cathedral amid the ashes of the city became a symbol of hope and renewal, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming destruction, something enduring could survive. The rebuilding of St. Paul's, led by architect Sir Christopher Wren, would become one of the most iconic restoration projects in British history, a testament to the city's determination to rise from the ashes. For the booksellers, the fire represented a painful chapter in their history. Yet, the story of their loss was also one of recovery. Many of them were forced to rebuild their businesses from the ground up. They searched for new sources of rare books, sought new patrons, and began again to offer the intellectual treasures of the day to the people of London. While the loss of the manuscripts and books from Amen Corner would never be fully repaired, the book trade in London would eventually rise again, just as the city itself did. The rise of Amen Corner and its role in literary culture. Amen Corner's history was deeply entwined with the rise of the printing press in London. As the book trade flourished in the 16th and 17th centuries, the area became a vital centre for publishing and bookselling. The streets surrounding St. Paul's Cathedral became home to renowned printers, publishers, and booksellers, including the famous Andrew Crooke, who printed works by John Milton, one of the most important literary figures of the era. The proximity of the area to the cathedral itself meant that intellectual, political, and religious ideas flowed freely through Amen Corner. It was here that writers and thinkers of the day came together, not just to sell books, but to share ideas, challenge conventions, and spark debates that would shape the future of England. The name, Amen Corner, itself has religious roots, tied to the location's association with St. Paul's Cathedral. The area's narrow streets were named after religious practices and the sacred sounds of the congregation's prayers. The phrase, Amen, symbolized an affirmation, a conclusion to a prayer or statement, and it is believed that the name, Amen Corner, emerged from the sounds of worship that resonated through the streets, providing both a spiritual and cultural significance to the area. This connection between religion, commerce, and culture made Amen Corner an ideal location for booksellers, who sold not only religious texts, but a vast array of printed materials covering politics, science, literature, and philosophy. The end of an era. Despite the destruction brought on by the Great Fire, Amen Corner's legacy as a literary epicenter persisted, even as the area's commercial prominence began to fade. The rise of new publishing districts such as Fleet Street and the expansion of London's print industry meant that Amen Corner gradually lost its standing as the city's primary hub for bookselling. Yet the name continued to live on in the hearts and minds of those who remembered the bustling street filled with the sounds of debate, discussion, and intellectual fervor. By the 19th century, the once thriving bookshops had disappeared, replaced by newer commercial ventures. Modern buildings now stand where the famed bookshops of Amen Corner once were. Yet, the memory of this historic location endures, not only in the stories of the booksellers and the destruction of their wares but also in the deeper cultural and intellectual heritage that Amen Corner represents. The area remains a symbol of London's intellectual resilience, the preservation of knowledge, and the power of renewal in the face of calamity. In the aftermath of the fire, as London rebuilt itself, the story of Amen Corner was woven into the larger narrative of survival and renewal. The booksellers who rebuilt their businesses contributed to the preservation of intellectual and cultural history, continuing the work that had been so tragically interrupted. And, in time, the lessons of the Great Fire, the vulnerability of knowledge and culture, and the power of resilience and renewal, became embedded in the consciousness of the city. London, like the booksellers of Amen Corner, would rise from the ashes, and its intellectual legacy would continue to inspire future generations. Thus, the history of Amen Corner and the Great Fire of London remain entwined, a reminder of the fragile nature of cultural heritage and the enduring human spirit that rebuilds after devastation. The legacy of the booksellers and the loss of their priceless collections in the crypt of St. Paul's is a poignant chapter in the larger story of London's ability to recover, renew, and preserve its cultural soul. Indeed, despite the devastation caused by the Great Fire of London, Amen Corner's historical connection to bookselling, particularly religious texts such as the Bible, continues to be a significant part of its legacy. The book trade in Amen Corner, though it experienced tremendous disruption during and after the fire, was not extinguished. Over time, it rebounded and remained closely tied to the production and distribution of important religious works, including the Bible. A legacy of religious publishing. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the area around St. Paul's Cathedral, including Amen Corner, became a hub for the publication of religious texts. This was a time when the Protestant Reformation was reshaping England's religious landscape, and the demand for Bibles and religious pamphlets was high. Publishers and booksellers in Amen Corner played a critical role in making the Bible more accessible to the English-speaking population. One of the most significant moments in the history of the Bible's publication came in 1611 with the publication of the King James Bible, one of the most influential and widely read translations of the Christian scriptures. Though the printing of the Bible was not confined to Amen Corner, it was during this time that the district's booksellers made a notable impact on religious publishing. The area's proximity to the cathedral, a center of worship, made it an ideal location for booksellers specializing in religious works. The Bible's continued production. While much of the original character of Amen Corner as a literary and commercial hub for booksellers has faded over the centuries, the area has maintained its strong association with the Bible and religious texts. The enduring reputation of Amen Corner as a center for Bible publishing persists into the modern era. Some publishers and printing houses with historical ties to the area continue to produce Bibles and other religious texts, contributing to a long-standing tradition. The tradition of Bible production in this area has been part of London's broader legacy of religious and intellectual publishing, which continues to this day. Many well-established Bible publishers in the UK still draw on the area's rich history of Bible production, with certain publishers being based in or near the City of London. These publishers may not operate on Amen Corner itself anymore, but they carry forward the area's legacy by continuing to print and distribute Bibles in a variety of formats, whether for personal devotion, study, or liturgical use. Amen Corner in the modern era. Today, Amen Corner is a much changed place. The historic bookshops that once lined the street have long been replaced by modern office buildings, but the area's connection to literature, especially religious literature, is not entirely lost. The ongoing publication of Bibles and other Christian texts, even if not directly on Amen Corner itself, keeps the area's legacy alive in the world of religious publishing. While many of the original booksellers and publishers of Amen Corner may have moved or shifted industries, the symbolic link between Amen Corner and the Bible persists. It stands as a reminder of the pivotal role that this small, historic district played in the dissemination of knowledge, particularly religious knowledge, in an age when books were rare and precious commodities. Thus, while the bookshops may no longer occupy the narrow lanes of Amen Corner, the tradition of producing Bibles and religious texts in the area endures, woven into the fabric of London's literary and spiritual heritage.